Alright, welcome guys once again. So this is module 2 on learning how to code in C. If you joined us during module 1, sure you learned a lot, and here is module 2. So if you are just joining us for the first time, please do well to subscribe and give a thumbs up to this video if you enjoyed the video. However, if this is your first time joining too, you can refer back to module 1 and see some of the things that we covered. Now, what do we look forward to learning in module 2? In module 2, we will talk about variables. We're going to understand variables and the data types. Also, we will talk about input and output. And thereafter, we'll talk about operators and expressions. In order to prevent the video from getting too long, I've decided to divide this video into 3 parts. So the first part, which you're watching right now, will cater for understanding variables and data types. So what do we look forward to learning in part 1? We'll learn about variables and their roles. We'll explore the different data types, and we'll see how we declare and initialize various data types. Alright, so let's dig in. Now, what are variables? Variables are containers for storing data values. Data values that we store include numbers, characters, or symbols. Now, in C, there are different types of variables, and these variables are defined with different keywords. For example, the int, int. The int is a variable, or the int is a data type that stores only integers. So variables that are marked int are usually used to store integers, that is whole numbers without decimals. Example of these numbers could be positive numbers, could be negative numbers. I've written here 123 or minus 123. These two numbers are integers because they do not have decimals. The next data type is the float. Now, the float is used beside variables that are used to store floating point numbers. So numbers with decimal points are called floats. And such numbers, examples here, could be positive, could be negative. For example, we have 19.99 or negative 19.99. Now, the next data type we'll be considering is the char. Now, the char is used to store single characters such as A, small letter or capital letters are stored with the char. We can also use the char to store symbols. And usually, what differentiates the char from another data type that we'll consider subsequently is that char has single quotes. So single quotes is used to store single characters. Now, let us understand how we declare variables. So when we're trying to declare variable, the variable are of different data types. So to declare a variable, we'll need to indicate the type of the variable name, and the value that is assigned to the variable. So the type here could be integer, it could be float, it could be double, we'll see that subsequently. It could also be char. And then we write the variable name, and then we'll put equal to and include the value. Now, let's see an example of how that is done. So here, we'll be using an online compiler to show us how this is done. It doesn't mean that you cannot still use your VS Code. If you are using your VS Code that we used from last week, it still works the same way. But I'm using the online compiler because it shows the output side by side. It makes it easier for me to explain throughout the duration of the code. This online compiler is available on the internet. So just go to google.com and type on online C compiler, and the first one that will display for you is good to go. Okay, so we start our C function from last week. From the last video we learned, we saw that you need to include stdio.h, which is your standard header file for input and output. And the next thing we need to do is to include our main function. Our main function usually runs the code, and then we start with our open brace. Usually we have our return statement and our okay, good. So now, based on what we learned, we see that if we want to declare a variable, we can use the int for this equate that to that. Now, the next variable type that we learned just now is the float. I've said float can take, so let me call this my float. Big decimal number, so let's call this 6.3. We said the next variable type is teacher. So let me call this char. Call it whatever you want. So let me use single quote here and store the alphabet C. Great. So this is just basically how to declare the various data. Okay, so now we've learned how to declare the different variable types. Now there's something we call a format specifier. So what is the role of a format specifier? A format specifier is used together with printf function. About printf in the last video, you can quickly go back and check that if you still do not know how the printf function works. So the printf function tells the compiler what type of data the variable is storing. So it's basically a placeholder for the variable value. Now the format specifier starts with the percentage sign followed by a character. So for example, let's say our data type or our variable type is an integer variable. In order for us to be able to print out that variable, we need to use the format specifier, which is %d or %i. %d representing digit or %i representing integer, surrounded by double quotes. Then that will be done inside the printf function. We'll see how we do that subsequently. Now, if we intend to print char, we use %c, as you see here, and if it's for float, we use %n. Come with me as we do that. Okay, so using our print function now, our printf function, what are we trying to print? We're trying to print my number. So we use the format specifier, which is %d, that's for integer. Write the variable name, which is my statement, and let's run. Now you see the output comes here as 6. Okay, so let's improve the data. Say my number is one specifier, and then we run. So you see it says my number is 6. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and print the floats. Once again, I will say my float is we use the format specifier for float. What is format specifier for float? Oh, that's F. Write my float. And we run. It says my number is 6, my float is 6.78. So because we don't want these two printouts appearing on the same line, we have to include a new line here. This says my number is 6, my float is 6.7800. Now usually the automatic output for my floats or for floats in C is usually in 8 decimal places. So the printout for floats in C is automatically adjusted to about 8 decimals. But if you intend to reduce the number of decimal places, you can here by changing. If I put 2 here, it means I want the output in 2 decimal places. Alright, so you see if I put 2 here, it shows that I want it in 2 decimal places. If I put 3 here, it means I want it in 3 decimal places, and so on. If I put 1 here, it means I want it in 1 decimal place. And you notice something interesting happens. 6.78 is automatically approximated to be 6.8. So that's what happens when you try to adjust. For now, I'll still leave it as percentage %F. Now the next thing I intend to print is to print my characters. So I use double quotes and I say is, print that in full. The character is, we use the format specifier for character, which is percentage %C. Then we write, I will terminate the sentence here. Now because I want that to print on a new line, so I put this here, and then when I run, it says my number is 6, my float is 800, 8000, my character is C. Okay, so let me change this once again to D. When we run that, it says my character is D. It is to 6.8456. When we run that, you see 6.78. If I change this to 689, I run that, it gives me 689. Now if I put negative numbers here, I run, still get my negative 69 and my negative 6. If I put a character here, say that, see my symbol gets printed as star. So that's why we say the char function is used to output both characters, alphabets, both uppercase, lowercase, and also for symbols. Okay, great. Let's move on now. Okay, so after understanding the various data or the various data types that we have and how the variables and also print the variables out, let us go ahead now and talk about the data types and to understand each of the data types. Now we learned that previously where we have seen that variables in C must be specified by their data type. You must use a format specifier inside the printf function in order to be able to display it. So what is the description of each of the data types? Now the int data type is usually 2 or 4 bytes depending on the type of computer that you're using. So if you're using a 32-bit machine, the size of int will be 2 bytes. But if you're using a 64-bit machine, the size of your int will be 4 bytes. While for floats, it's usually 4 bytes. For double is 8 bytes, and for characters, it's usually 1 byte. So what do we store in the integer data type? We store whole numbers without decimals, either positive or negative. For floats, we store fractional numbers, numbers that contain 1 or more decimals, and we can get as high as 6 to 7 decimal digits. While the double is also used as in similar fashion to floats, but it helps us to get decimal digits that are up to 15 decimal places. While our char, we said, is used to store single characters, both uppercase and lowercase, single numbers can also be written as characters, and also we have symbols can also be written as characters. And here are the format specifier. For integer, it's %D or %I. For floats, it's %F. For double, it's %LF. Then for char, it's %C. And for strings, it's %S. Now, there's something we need to do now. It's how we do data type conversion. Sometimes you have to convert the values of one data type to another, and that's when we'll talk about data type conversion. Now, let me show you an example of what we mean. So let me take this out. Here I have number, let me call that 6. And I have another number. digit format. And one to be divided by 2. And that is an error. Okay, so let's run that again. Now you see that I'm saying minus 1 6 divided by minus 2, which is 4. It's supposed to be 6 divided by 4 is not supposed to be 1. Or let me do something a bit easier. 5 divided by 2. We get 2 as a result. But usually 5 divided by 2 should give us 2.5. The reason why we have 2 as the output is because 5 has been regarded to be an int, and 2 has also been regarded to be an int. So automatically, the answer that we get is converted to an integer. So what we are saying is, if this were to be written as a float, and this were to be written as a float as well, we use the float specifier for the output. We run the code once again. To display. Okay, so based on the results, you see that the answer is now correct as 2.5000. So this shows that the particular type of data type that we use in our calculation or in our operation is very important. Okay, so it means that to get the right result, we need to know how the data type conversion works. So there are two types of conversion in C. We have the implicit conversion, and explicit conversion. Discuss them one at a time. So we say implicit conversion is done automatically by the compiler. So it means when we are assigning the value of one data type to another, here, let's say my node 2 is not available. So I only have my node 1, and I've written it here as an integer. And I'm using a format specifier D, which is decimal, which is digit or integer. If I run it, I get my 5. Now, if I change the format specifier for the output to be a float, the C compiler would automatically convert this integer 5 to a floating number. So we see my output is written as 0.000 because it's automatically converting this integer 5. Okay, also, let's say I've written this as a float, and I write this as a D. And my float, let's see, my float is 5.67, and I run this. You see, this is a float written as 5.67. I've used the wrong format specifier to output value, so it converts that to a digit. Okay. The floating numbers, when we use a different format specifier, we don't get the right one. When we use the correct format specifier, we get it. So it's very important that the right format specifier is used when we are trying to do it. Okay, so let's say I have this once again. Let's repeat the calculation we did earlier. Integer, and say we have another integer written as my equal to 2. And then we wrote the answer as say it's a floating number, minus 1 divided by 2. Then we run that. So you see that we have to get 2.25. So see that by doing this now, we do not get the right input. So let's change this to LU, and then we'll see something quickly. Okay, so we see that 5 divided by 2 still gives us 2. So automatically integer z. Okay, so let's talk about the second method, and that's the explicit. For our explicit conversion, we manually type in the parentheses in front of the value what we want the output to be. So let's take an example. So let's say I want so it means here I will just all I need to do here is this is f, just type float here and do this. I manually want the value here of this division to be automatically converted to float. And let's run the program now and let's see the output. Okay, so after running the program, this was the output that we got. This, so you see that putting float before the division, you have explicitly, you have explicitly done the conversion. Two ways for doing the conversion: implicitly, by allowing the C compiler automatically to do the conversion for you. The second way is by specifying the actual data type once the result to be. Okay, so there you have it. Right. So before we move on to the next part, which is part 2, part 2 will be released in the next video. We have learned so far the different various types of data, the data type storages that we have. We talked about the int, about the char, about the float. Notice that we did not talk about one other data type, strings. We will talk about strings subsequently in next video, which we consider input and output. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, do give a thumbs up to it. I look forward to seeing you in a subsequent video. Alright, bye for now.